every now and then you meet someone, and when you see them, you just have this instinct like, I'm gonna get to know this person and we are going to have fun together. And that was my instinct when I met Martha. And when she introduced me, I'm just like, how do you pronounce the last name? She goes, it's Krejci, like crazy. So she is kind of crazy. She does amazing things. She sets crazy goals and she smashes them out of the park. Now, more interestingly, she is somebody who is putting content everywhere, also does not care if it gets viewed, and yet still banks over $1 million a month through her systems. We're going to break down how it works, and you're going to enjoy this one, I promise you.
The Content Capitalist Podcast.
You've got something going on right now where people are paying for your courses and your coaching. When did that get started?
2017 is when all of that started. And even when all of that started, it has still sort of like grown and molded and sort of like, changed form and changed shape and whatever. But yeah, I started creating courses in about 2017.
Do you remember your first course? What was the big promise?
I never had my first courses weren't big. They were all small, and then they were put into a membership. So they were all like 27, 37. I don't remember what the first one was though, because we made like something like 128 of them in a very short amount of time. So I don't remember which the first one was.
So how do you produce 128 courses? Like, do you just have someone sitting there with a camera saying, what about this? What about that? And you just record answers? Or did you like properly outline everything? And,
I outlined them. Yeah. Cause I had to learn all of this. Like, so at GoDaddy, there's a lot of stuff that I just had a good working knowledge anyway of like reality, because, at that point in time, you were seeing a lot of dude bros on the front of Ferraris. And it was kind of like, that's not real. Like the things that they were teaching weren't real. And so I knew a lot of like, okay, here's what really works instead. And then, and so I would just go with the questions that people asked me the most, and I would create courses so people would be like, well, how do I create a YouTube channel? Okay, well, here's a course, like pop that out. My husband's actually the YouTube guy, right? So he actually created that video, or that course, excuse me. And, then it would be like, how do I set up my Facebook business page? What are the settings that should be on there? So they would be very small things, but they made a lot of sense whenever they all lived together in a membership. And they also made a lot of sense as low cost lead generating things too at that time. So picked up a lot of SEO just on that.
one of my favorite questions to ask my guests is, when did that hockey stick curve start? Because it's so frustrating when you're doing a lot of work, kind of like I am with this YouTube channel. I don't know, maybe this has 2 views, 3 views, I don't know, but we're still at this flat area. And we have to believe that there will be this inflection point where it bounces up and it starts getting traction if you are doing good work. So I'm asking her because honestly, this is a tiny, tiny YouTube channel, a tiny podcast show, and we're just started in a very crazy space. So this question was kind of for my personal gratification. How much longer am I going to grind in this? And her answer is exactly what I needed to hear. Let's talk about that hockey stick curve. Where did you see the biggest like inflection point in progress? Because 7 figures a month is no joke. That's a lot. That's more than, like, you're in the 1% of the 1% probably when it comes to income. So was there a hockey stick moment, or has it all just been, a gradual steady curve,
There were 2 hockey stick moments, and I'm going to talk about, there was the one where it was our first 7-figure month. There was that one, but that one was less momentous as the first one. So I want to talk about the first one, because the first one is when it was the very first time I hit 30K a month. And previously 30K, the previous year I had made $19,000 in a year. And so now this next year I'm making, a $30,000 month. And that was where, Mike and I looked at each other like, we're going to be okay. Like, it was one of those moments where, because you just struggle for so long, and you don't know if things are working. You have faith in yourself. You know that you're a smart person, but you're like, man, I'm doing these things and I just don't know. I don't know that it's really going to hit the way I want it to hit, you know? And so that very first month where we hit 30K, it was a lot of, I remember we had this calendar on the wall, and it was, we would notch out every single day. So in order for a goal to actually be attained, you have to pay attention to the goal, right? And so every single day we put on our what we made that day. So that's still something that I teach people. Put on what your call to action was that day, and then what you made also, so you know what really tripped the trigger of people. But anyway, so every day we were putting in the numbers, and we got to the 15th, and we were at 15K on the 15th, and I was like, this is like where shallow breathing starts, because you're like, you're fighting your old self, right? Your brain is literally like, who am I right now? Like, my family, no one in my family has ever been able to make this amount of money. I have always been in my family like the kid that just wasn't going to amount to anything. I was just kind of like the joke. And uh and so on the 15th, when it was at 15K, I was just like, oh my gosh, it's happening. Like, it's happening. And so then we kept going. We kept going. On the 20th, we were at like 19K. So it was sub 20. And I was like, oh, just be 20. Just be 20. It's on the 20th. And then it kept going and it kept going. We got to the end of the month and it was 30K. And it was like, when I say like that we felt like we were going to be okay, there's only some people that are really going to get that feeling, that are going to be listening and be like, that's the feeling where you can like, let's start paying off some bills. Let's start paying down some stuff, because we don't need to do this, because the way that we made this money is repeatable. And we know that this is because we've done it for a whole month, which, I mean, a whole month is really kind of nothing in the long term, right? But now we know repeatable behaviors that are working. And so then we just kind of added on to that. The next month was 45K. The next month was 65, I think, after that. And it just kind of kept going up. And then we introduced the HBR, Home Based Revolution, like my signature program where I teach all of everything. And that month, the very first month of HBR, that was where we hit 7 figures a month. And it was crazy.
I have a lot of clients, both men and women, and something I get a lot from women, but not so much men, is I don't look good enough for camera. I don't look pretty enough. I have a double chin, or my hair is not perfect, and I'm not wearing the right jewelry. I want to make sure my cleavage shows, like all that stuff is so interesting, because as a dude, I don't really feel those things, but it's so important, because if those little things that bother you are stopping you from getting in front of the camera and delivering your message, you need to listen to this next part and hear what Martha had to say and how she advises you to step forward if that is your issue.
What do you advise people who feel like, video is not their thing, or they can't get in front of a live audience or record a course or whatever? How do you help people like that?
Again, I go back to bat signal, or the person that you're here to serve. I call it bat signal. So there's that needs to get you into movement. Now, there are some people who really don't do well on video. Some people don't, or I think eventually you would, but you don't want to, and whatever. And I say, just then, if you want to have somebody do voiceover, if you want to do voiceover and you just have slides in front of you, just get the content out. Just get the content out so you can help people. So I work with a lot of military, first responders, and people like that privacy is a number one thing for them and their families. They are not putting their face on anything because it's unsafe. And so there's still ways to be able to build your brand and to build your business without having your face on it. And so it's really just getting clear about, okay, the first and foremost thing is not to focus on the fear. The first and foremost thing is to focus on how are you going to serve? And then you can make anything happen. and how you want to serve. Like, you can make it happen in any capacity. So if you don't want to be on it, then don't be on it. There's ways around that.
Now, I have a lot of clients that come to me and hire my services to help them create content for social media to generate leads so they could get more sales in their business. That's what we do, right? We create a lot of video. Yet it doesn't make sense unless you have certain conditions met in order to be spending, 4, 5, 6 figures a month to work with me. So if you're wondering whether you should hire Ken Okazaki or another company in order to help you really amplify your message and get more authority online, then listen to what she has to say here.
When is it right to invest in it? Like, let's say I just got $1 million. Like, is this too much car for me? Like, there's that question, right? But from your perspective, when is it appropriate for a business that's already up and running, right? They've got a few things figured out, but to hire out some professionals to help them with the creatives, social media, and things like that.
It's your voice. I mean, it's how you're going to be seen. As the business owner, your job is the vision. Your job is to have the finger on the pulse of your people, finger on the pulse of your customers, your clients, your audience, whatever you want to call them. You need to know where they're at, where they're going, what are they looking for? Is there a branch in the road for them? Like, you need to be paying attention to them. And if you're focused on sort of like this task stuff to the side, you're not going to be able to do this. You can't do both. And so, not effectively. And so I think you do your own social media long enough to know what you want your voice to be, and then you pass it off to somebody else. What you need to do is you need to invest in somebody else to perfect that for you, because your job is the visionary. As the business owner, your job is the vision. Your job is to have the finger on the pulse of your people, finger on the pulse of your customers, your clients, your audience, whatever you want to call them. You need to know where they're at, where they're going, what are they looking for? Is there a branch in the road for them? Like, you need to be paying attention to them. And if you're focused on sort of like this task stuff to the side, you're not going to be able to do this. You can't do both. And so, not effectively. And so I think you do your own social media long enough to know what you want your voice to be, and then you pass it off to somebody else, like Ken.
Guys, I hope you enjoyed this session with Martha Krejci, pronounced like crazy because she's a crazy woman, but she gets stuff done. She's amazing. If you want to listen to the full one with a lot more interesting stories, then click right around here for the full-length YouTube video. Also, subscribe to the podcast. There's links below for Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, whatever your favorite platform is. Listen to it if you don't want to sit and watch an hour, which a lot of people don't, but listen to it while you're working out, while you're washing dishes, washing your dog, taking a bath, eating dinner, whatever it is. Get that podcast going so that you can hear the full story, because you don't know what you're missing out on, do you? Also, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.